now it's yours, Martin.
Okay, hello everybody. My name is Martin Peřina, and the first thing I'd like to apologize because I suffered some kind of sore throat since yesterday, so if you don't hear me, please come closer. Today I'd like to talk about oVirt extension API and its usage in AAA. We will cover some kind of introduction, then we will take a look at the oVirt extension API, and then we will talk about existing extensions which are used mostly in AAA, and also some kind of future plans for tomorrow. Just a quick introduction. What is oVirt? It's a centralized management system for server and desktop virtualization. It has sophisticated user interface, and it's based on Linux and KVM. What is this magic AAA? It's an abbreviation for three word authentication. It's let's say some kind of method how to verify who is the user which accesses the system. Authorization, it's a method how to verify what rights or privileges has the user. And accounting, it's all about statistics and additional information on what each user did in the system. In the previous version in oVirt, we have a complex implementation using Kerberos and LDAP to configure users and their privileges in oVirt. It was really not perfect code. It was insecure, no SSL, TLS, no single sign-on. We didn't have proper support for multi-domains setup like Active Directory, Forest, and so on. There was pretty no customization. Everything was written in monolithic module without pretty nothing to be changed, and it was really not very optimized. When we talked about how to improve this in next version, we have a discussion if to rewrite it from scratch using monolithic design, or if we will go into some sort of extension. Currently in oVirt we didn't have any API for extensions, so we decided to provide custom extension API not only for AAA but also for other parts of the system. Why? Because monolithic methodology is never so flexible as extensions. Usually, if you have some kind of extensions, it's easy to extend it without breaking compatibility. And we also wanted to allow, because the engine is written in Java, so we wanted to allow, let's say, some sort of customizations to be written in different languages. So the oVirt extension API were introduced in oVirt 3.5. It came to public, I think it's September last year, so it's, I would say, pretty new. Currently the extension API is used only for AA and logging, but in future releases we are doing some preparations to also other parts of engine to be used or to be refactored using extensions. Currently we are using JBoss modules to leverage extensions, and extensions configuration is stored in property files. When we discussed about how to do the extensions, we decided that primitive approach using just invoke with map of input parameters and map of output parameters would be primitive, but I would say most easier to implement and less prone to breaking compatibility. So each extension has just invoke method with map of input and output parameters. Keys of these maps have contains usually some kind of meaningful name. It contains UUID to uniquely define what it is, and it contains a type. I would say common types for all extensions are placed in oVirt engine API extensions package, and there are some, I would say, really important classes. So it's extension UUID, it contains UUID and some kind of descriptive name. Sorry?
When writing the extension, do I need to clear the new, and I introduce new key, a new UUID, do I need to clear that UUID with you guys, or can I just start using it and it's okay?
You should be, if you introduce a new key, you should be aware that you are not using already existing key.
Yes, I try to check that there isn't the key that I can use.
We verify when we deploy the extension, so we will show the error that this UUID already exists. But if you introduce something new, you should check for yourself if you are using. Okay. So extension key, it's extension UUID and type. And when you take a look at the map, it's defined as map of extension key and object. It contains runtime time enforcement of the type. So if you define that, for example, you have a type integer, into this map you will not get any other types than integer, even when it's declared as object is value. Other important class is a base. It contains common constants for all extensions. The most important ones are invoke keys. These are keys for input-output maps. Invoke commands, which is the available commands for each extensions. If we take a look at this level, just common extensions, we have two commands. We have load command and we have initialize command. And also invoke result, it's a result of invoke method execution. Extensions are configured in using text property files. The configuration should be placed into one of those directories. Usually when you want to do some customization, you should put those into etc directory. And I would say even when your extensions are installed on a system, they are loaded into oVirt only when they are configured. So when you provide a new extension, you will also need to provide a configuration to be able to load it into oVirt engine and use it. How does the configuration extensions look like? It's a simple property file. You need to specify the extension name. You need to specify binding methods. For now it's just JBoss module, but in the future we will maybe provide also other methods. You need to specify the JBoss module, and you also need to specify a class that is provided in this module, and also what this JBoss module provides. These are only mandatory attributes that needs to be defined for each extensions. You also can provide your own in this configuration file, but in order to this extension to be loaded, you need to provide those. On the other side, when you want to work with extensions, we have this extension manager, which provides an API how to work with loaded extensions. It uses observer pattern, so you can, for example, register to extension manager, and when new extension is loaded or reinitialized or something like that, you can be notified about it. And also, the extension manager provides a method how to get the loaded extensions using the names they provide, or the name of the extension, or all the loaded extension, and so on. When you work with extension and you get the extensions through the extensions manager, you always get an instance of extension proxy, not the class that is really provided by an extension. Why? Because it simplifies invoke method execution. For example, if some kind of exception is raised during the extension invocation, it is covered into or surrounded by a result, and only failure result is reported into the caller, so you don't have to care about it. You will know that you always get returned the result method and no exception, nothing like that. And it also makes for the developers, to provide some kind of, let's say, logging, debugging features to know what really happened and what went wrong. About some kind of extensions resources, this extension API is part of oVirt engine source code. It's implemented in oVirt engine extensions API impl package. If you want to create your new extensions and you are using Maven to build, you usually need to add this dependency to your code, and all these extensions API is documented using Javadoc format. So if you grab the code from oVirt and take a look at this Javadoc documentation, that should be anything needed for you to create new extension. Before we will move to the next part, this was, I would say, some kind of developer preview on what are the extensions, how can you create one, and so on. Do you have any questions?
I'd love to see an example of how things are invoked. Do you have?
I can show you the source code, but nothing like, I would say, no easy one. Okay, now invoke extension. Okay, so then if we move on, some let's say sort of more introduction into AAA. We already defined that authentication is used to verify who the user is. For authentication, we are using shortcut authn in our code, and all, I would say, also constants needed for this authentication is based on oVirt engine API extension AA authn. The goal of this step is to verify which user and who are the user which is trying to access the system. The input of the step can be either username and password or HTTP negotiations. And the output is something that we call authentication record, which contains principal and validity time interval. The next step is authorization. Also, it's another extension. It's independent, let's say, some sort of way to authentication. So all needed for authorization is also placed in authz class. And the goal of this is to provide additional details about the user. The input of the authorization phase is a principal, and the output is, I would say, extended authentication record with other details like user real name, set of groups that the user belongs to and other information they are provided. And I would say last step or phase is accounting. It's also all needed is introduced in ACCT, and it provides some information about security-related events like which user log in, which will log out, what they try to execute or access, and in future we hope we will extend it to provide full auditing capability. Yes?
Question about the authentication interaction.
Yeah.
Can you do the authentication, authorization, and collection of additional attributes outside in the Apache modules and then just pass it into the authorization by passing the authentication?
I will show something later about it. Currently, there are two ways. If you are using username and password, then it's currently in oVirt 5 passed into the oVirt application and they are processed. If you are HTTP negotiation, you can use Apache before it, and you can somehow let the Apache to authenticate your user and only pass this user principal to oVirt, which is able to process it.
Right.
The problem is if you use things like schema, we had a nice presentation next door last hour. So all you know about the user came in the HTTP request. And you authenticate the user, that's fine. And then you have authorization as a separate part. And the last time we communicated, it was not possible to get at the attributes of that HTTP request from the authorization part, because the authorization part is also supposed to somehow be used outside of the web UI access. Now the question is, did anything change after or around C5 for the user or the extension being able to store any data you can collect, some assertions, group membership, whatever, in some database to be then, or data storage, to be then used by authorization?
Currently, we can leverage only for LDAP. We are preparing an extensions to also load this information from a database. From a database, if that's the I understand
like
the question.
Like database of oVirt.
Yes, but it also there is preparing. I will have this in later slide. We are preparing JDBC extensions, which somehow you can define where are your authorization records are. It can be even in different database, and oVirt will use it. If that was the question.
Is not to force the admin to set up a separate database, because as far as I understand, oVirt already typically uses Postgres or whatever.
It depends on use case. If you already have your database with users, we can use it. If you don't, if you don't, we will create necessary tables in our database, and we will provide command line tools how to use them or how to edit.
This should be like seamless. It should be hidden under. It should be managed. I mean, when someone comes in, the user is managed somewhere outside.
I will skip it for now because we are preparing for next version the complete separation of authentication from our application, because currently we have three applications: web admin UI, portal, and reports. And for next version, we are preparing to using single sign-on on all of these three applications in a separate application, which can be, it's not yet decided, but can be abstracted to using XAML, if that's what you mean. But currently we are at this stage, just to prepare for this big change. Okay, so if we move on, the other feature that we provide, it's called mapping. It's used to somehow map or process authentication information before they are used. So, for example, we can use mapping of username before authentication or mapping of principal before authorization. And it's used, for example, when your user log in into application with username at domain. We want to remove this domain, for example, when we access the LDAP server or something like that. So there are several usage of this mapping, and also this mapping can be used. I will show it in the next slide. To leverage Apache authentication and use it in oVirt. And there are also some kind of filters which leverage all these things together, and they supports negotiations, they support basic authentication, and they also takes care of session management, especially that in oVirt, outside the simple HTTP session management, we also have something that's called engine session, and that's, I would say, really developer based, but it's hidden from a user. So this is where. Sorry. So currently, to, let's say, provide what we already have, we surrounded the existing code into we call built-in extension. So that was provided in 3.4. This admin at internal login method. It's surrounded in internal built-in extension, and we also have Kerberos LDAP, which is some sort of covering what was in oVirt 3.4 and before. So the existing legacy Kerberos LDAP authentication and authorization. In 3.5, we introduced new extensions. It's called oVirt Engine Extension AAA LDAP, and it's completely new. It's I would say uses the best from the LDAP, and it doesn't force you to provide Kerberos infrastructure. So it uses just LDAP. It's designed the way that everything can be customized using just property files or text files. So if you have some kind of special LDAP configuration or special mapping of users as groups and so on, everything can be customized by you using just editing text files. I will show them later. And it also is very optimized. It's using completely new SDK provided by Admount ID, and it's also leverages the security features of LDAP, so we can, for example, using certificates to access LDAP server, and also to communicate with LDAP server using SSL, TLS, and so on.
As far as I understand, the presence of some kind of LDAP source is right now assumed.
As I said, currently we have what we have before. So admin at internal and Kerberos LDAP. And now in oVirt 3.5 we have a new one that you can have LDAP without Kerberos.
No, I understand, but this is for the lookup of the users and the groups. That's what it is, right?
Yeah.
So, but it assumes that there is some directory all the time.
This extension is for LDAP.
Right. Do you plan to have an API above it so that the whole LDAP can be swapped with some other source, not being LDAP?
I will show you. We are planning also some other extensions. I will show you next. So how these extensions can be configured. As we said, we need to provide this text property file under etc over the engine extension D, and we need to provide some kind of extension name. As we said before, JBoss module, bindings methods, and so on. What is new here, that we need to provide something special to AA. It's a profile name. It's I would say some sort of a domain that was used from previous version that is showed in the UI of the user. So when you have in previous version you have the name of the LDAP server or something like that. So this is fully customizable and you can provide this domain. And there are also additional properties which defines, I will show later, how this can be fetched from the LDAP server. So this is for authentication. Something similar is for authorization. As we can see, you can have the same properties, or if you have really something complex, you can have different properties for authentication and authorization. And how these properties looks like, we provide some kind of, I would say, templates for typical servers like OpenLDAP, Active Directory, Red Hat Directory Server, and so on, which have, I would say, the common defined what's usual for these LDAP server, and you will just include those prerequisites. And then you will just define your LDAP server or servers, your user which is used to search the information, your password, and you also can define some sort of pool of connection and if to use SSL or no.
Are anonymous binds supported?
Yes.
So you just leave out the user, or you need to specify something? Because I did not find anything about that in the wiki for
yes, you will just leave, as far as I know, you will leave the password empty and I think also user empty.
Okay.
But I will need to check with the documentation, but as far as I know, just leave it empty and it should support anonymous. So this is the configuration, and using this is enough, and you should see your users from LDAP inside oVirt. So this extension is provided outside oVirt engine sources, but it's still on getit.org. It has, I would say, quite good documentation using README files, and we using this we provide at least the same LDAP support as we provide before, but we also provide some new, because for example, I think we didn't provide support for iPlanet or some more exotic LDAP servers. And what's most important, we are not forcing our users to have some predefined structure of users and groups. We think it's best. Everything gets on you. If you have your structure, you can easily fetch it and by defining the configuration in this text file.
But in the past you had just the property file with the definition of the LDAP queries, right?
Yeah.
Now it is more.
Yeah, it's more complex. I will continue for now, and if we will have time, I can show you how this looks like, because I would say it's really deep dive. Okay, another extensions that we will have is called AA Mist. It contains Mist-Channel's AA tools, and for example, it provides authentication, uses HTTP request properties. So, for example, you can set those properties in Apache, and then oVirt will just use them. And it also provides mapping based on some kind of regular expressions for this. So if you are using this, you can enable SSO to whole oVirt engine using Apache. If you configure mod auth kerb in Apache and you will configure it to pass this authentication information in a header and principal and configure this extension, you can do even now single sign-on using Apache.
Have there been any changes to allow fallback if the Apache or the Kerberos single sign-on does not happen, to fall back into the form-based logon?
I don't think
chaining of those authentication providers to try one, try another one, try another one.
I don't think so, but if you are really interested, I will contact the man who knows more about it. But I don't think so.
Okay.
We currently we are not. And the last extension that we will take care, it's AAA JDBC. As I said, it allows you to fetch your user and groups from any JDBC database. If you have already existing, we just connect it and get the information. If you don't have, we will just create the necessary tables in our database and use it. It will also provide command-line tools to manage AAA data, so you can let's say create user groups and so on, everything using command-line tools from these extensions. It's not yet released for public, but it should be really soon. I cannot tell you the exact date, but.
So are you saying that when we implement the integration with SSSD, we should write JDBC driver for SSSD?
Yes. It's Java, so we need JDBC drivers.
Not gonna happen.
Yeah.
That's the same rules. Well, because
Okay, I would say more future plans. We plan some extension also with SSAD support. As I said already, we would like to implement some kind of single sign-on service for all oVirt engine applications, and also to move this single sign-on outside this application and provide this standalone service, for example, to enable SAML integration with already existing infrastructure. And we also would like to provide some kind of extension tester tool. It should be a standalone tool by which you can test your extension, and it will allows you to run the complete process. For example, completely outside engine, you will test, for example, how the login looks like, and if you get into some kind of error, you will be notified, logged, and so on. So you don't need to, I would say, test your extension on demo or production environment. You can do this using this extension tester.
So that single sign-on service, so will I be able to run oVirt applications, but not oVirt single sign-on service, but my own service? The APIs, the HTTP.
Yeah, we are planning into this SSO service or oVirt SSO service to have the SAML integration or something like that. So
let's assume that I'm not very fond of oVirt's plans to implement every protocol out there, because then it will be OpenID connect, then it will be something else, and then if I just say I'm able to answer simple questions like who is this authenticated user, and I can write the service myself. Let's say it's a proprietary protocol that will never be able to implement. Will the interface between the single sign-on service and the applications be public? Or will it be so tied together that it will be impossible to recommend a single sign-on service?
it should be public. If you really want this, I would argue to create a RFE for this, and we will take a look. So please, if you really think that this is what you would like, please file an RFE for oVirt, and we will take a look. But as far as I know, this is really in a preparation phase. We are thinking about how to do it, what to do it. So if you think you need this, please file an RFE, and we will try to if it's possible, to implement it.
Okay.
So any other questions? If not, I think we'll still have some minutes. So if you are interested, I can show you how this customization looks like. So for example, we have these profiles for each LDAP server, and for example, we have something called simple properties. So here you can define. Yeah, I will try that. Okay. So everything is can be defined using this protocol. For example, if you have, I'll show you how to resolve, for example, these groups members. It's called auth. It's search request. It's contains this sequence called simple based en, and it contains some kind of filter to get this, so you can filter group objects, attribute members, and decode it. And this is in this simple property, and for each server, for example, OpenLDAP, you can specify groups. Yes, for example, simple filter for group object is object class equals group names. So by customizing these really intuitive text files, you can completely change or adapt to already existing structure of your LDAP server. No need to change the code. Any other questions? In that case, thanks a lot.
Jan is also from my team, so yeah, we work together.
If you really do something, because it's already really new. So if you, for example, you need something
In the future, it's simple. It's like, let us have the whole authentication and authorization and identity stuff outside of the application in the Apache model. We just give you the environment variables so that you can use them inside your session, and that's it. That's kind of where we're going with all the products. So we already did that with Satellite 5, Satellite 6, with managing queue. It's like, because that creates an opportunity to plug in an audio without changes to your code. You don't need to we do that. It's like, okay, OpenID, OpenAble connect with something else coming. So we take care. You don't need to change your application for all these cases. I think currently it's possible for so like,
Je tady někde zásuvka? To někde vede špát. Tady, jo, jasně.
Slavku chci hodu nebo?
Jo, chtěl bych nám.
Jako
Neprodivou. Jo, jasně, ale může tam dát že máte každý na jednu. Jo, tak já mám pak nahrál, já jsem včera zapomněl, takže jo. Ale ještě tak mi to prosím tě připomeň potom, no, já teďka jsem taky jako lehce nervní, takže...
Takže teďkom to nechceš nahrávat, tak
Pás, jo. Musíte mě to pak ale připomenout, jo, protože já pak budu... Jo, já to když tak mám na federal people, kdykoliv mám to pak když tak dohraju, jako kdyby cokoliv.
bude to přednášce. Myslím, časy včetně otázek to blíží.
Jo, jasně. A budete mě ukazovat 10 Ne.